Okay, this video is going to go through labeling the if statement. And so we're going to get some terms that we need to understand. Knowing these terms is going to be important. It's not for quiz purposes, although you will be quizzed on those things, or test purposes. But they are so that when I say something and use these terms, that you'll understand what I'm saying. Also, when you read the text or look at information in there, the textbook, that you'll understand what the author is saying. Also, when you communicate, answer questions in class, or talk to another student in class about code that you're working with, it'll also make your discussion of that code more efficient, because you'll be able to use words that mean something, and you won't have to use more words to explain something. So this will make it more efficient. And so what we do is we're looking at going back to the actual floor code that we have already studied up to this point. And so that is what we've looked at so far, is this if all the way down to else. This is what the kind of code we've been looking at. And so this is part of a bigger program. And so you can see here that the person is asked down here, enter the floor that you are on. So if they are on the floor, the 18th floor, then that means the question is, well, how many stories high are you? What floor is it actually on? So if it's 18, because they skipped 13, you're really 17 stories high. All right, you're 17 stories high. Now, if you are, let's say, if you're on the 7th floor, well, there's no floor numbers that are skipped up to that point, so you're actually 7 stories high in that particular building. All right, and so this is what we're going to do a lot, is we're going to get information from the user. Now this, whatever the person types in, whether 18 or 7 or whatever, that is going to be read by this line, and then it's going to be stored in a variable called floor. And so we are setting up a so the actual floor is being assigned here, or declared, to store how many stories high they really are, the actual floor. And so then we're going to have the compiler, then based on what the user enters, they're going to have the compiler is going to make a decision on here. So if we look at this, we have going from if all the way down to the last brace of else. This is called the if statement. So make sure you label this on your notes. This is the if statement. And so we're not talking about just one line of code. We're talking about the entire if structure here, so to speak. And so it starts on the first line is always going to start with an if, and then you're going to have parentheses. You're going to have some expression inside. All right, so that's the if statement. Now you can see here is that and I'm going to talk about it from the choices aspect. What are the choices? Either the compiler is going to subtract 1 from the floor, the floor that the user entered, or it's just going to store what the user entered into actual floor as well. So these are the two choices. So it's important for some students to realize this as choices. So hopefully it'll help them to understand it better. So this is a choice, and then this is a choice. Now you are programming the computer to make that choice. Now we said we said that a decision made by the compiler is based on the condition. Well, the condition is what? What is the condition that the compiler is going to use to make the decision? And if you remember what we did in the previous to this, is we were saying conditions in the form of a question. Well, after the user enters a number, the compiler is going to ask, let's say they did 18, it's going to ask, is 18 greater than 13? That's the condition. So make sure that you make a note on this, on your notes here, that this is the condition. It comes first because this is how decisions are made, is based on the condition. And so the condition has to happen, then the decision is made. And so in this case, if it were 18, of course, then 18 is greater than 13. Is 18 greater than 13? Yes. So the compiler would see this as being true. And so because it's true, it would then choose to execute this choice. Now, the terms that we're using for this is you have an if branch. We have we have two branches on here, and this is what the author uses, the term that the author uses. So you have an if branch, which goes from the if statement to the ending brace of that. So this is the if branch. The if branch contains a body, just like the main method has a body. And so the body of the if branch is in between the braces. So the choices are inside the braces, or inside the body of the branch. Now, I'm not going to write this because it takes too long, but obviously then that means this is the else branch. And the else branch has its body. Okay, so this is the body of the else branch. All right, so that's how this goes. The if statement has a condition. If it's true, then the if branch is executed. If it's false, then the if branch is skipped, and then the else branch is executed. Now here's an important question, then we'll be done. What does the compiler do on line 17? Most students are not able to answer that question right now. What does the compiler do on line 17? And this is something you need to know. It's something I will be testing you on, but it's more importantly, it's something that will help you understand writing the code more. And so the answer to that, and I'm going to pause this to set this up. So what does the compiler do on line 17? So what it does is it looks at this condition and it's asking a question. It evaluates if the condition is true or false. In other words, another way to say that same thing is the value of floor greater than 13. So what the compiler does is it looks at this and it goes, okay, is whatever the user entered, is that number? So if they said 18, is 18 greater than 13? If they entered a 7, it's going to go, is 7 greater than 13? And they're going to be yes, no questions, although what we're going to call them is true, false, true or false. All right, and so that is the important thing, because remember, the condition is how it makes a decision. If it's true, then the compiler is going to execute the if branch, and then it's going to skip the else branch. But now if it's false, then what it's going to do is going to skip the if branch and execute the else branch. And so the question is, why does the compiler evaluate the condition to be true or false? Why does it do that? And so I get all kinds of answers for this one as well. But here's what is the motive? Why does it care if it's greater than 13 or not? So the reason that the compiler asks that question to see if it's true or false is to make a decision. That's what we've been saying all along. The reason is to make or to decide whether or not to execute the if branch. actually the body of the if branch. In other words, it's going to decide whether or not to execute that first choice. All right, that's the reason why. So whether or not. So if not, if it chooses not to execute, then it goes on to the else and executes that. All right, so these are things that I will ask you many times. All right, this is all that we'll do as far as this video goes. And so we're done with that.